Okay, I think we can start. So, hello everyone. We're live from Kuopio and welcome to the second Health Talks hosted by Kuopio Health. My name is Ville Pihlajamäki and I work in communications at our cooperative Kuopio Health. Kuopio Health is a network committed to promoting competence, research and business in the health, well-being and nutrition sector and providing information about the top competencies in our region. Our work is based on a model of open innovation. Now you can find more info on us at our website www.kuopiohealth.fi. In today's webinar, we will learn about the things that are needed to know about the MDR when developing and placing a medical device on a market. And our top experts, Rosa Tengvall from Kasve and Tuukka Eloranta from Medikro, will shed a light on the most important changes regarding both medical devices and medical device softwares. After the presentations, we have few minutes for questions. So please write your questions in the chat and we will forward them to our presentators after the talks. And if there is not enough time to answer all of the questions, we will get back at you via email. So thank you for everyone for joining us and enjoy the presentations. Now let's welcome Tuukka Eloranta. Tuukka, the stage is yours.
Thank you and good morning from my behalf. My name is Tuukka Eloranta and I'm a CEO of Medikro. We are a manufacturer of spirometers, so we are in the business of asthma and COPD diagnostics and monitoring. So our company, shortly about our company, we are family owned, now in the second generation. The company was founded 1977 by my father, who was then studying in Helsinki for a medical doctor and also as an engineer in the medical physics. Since that, the company has been in the field of cardiorespiratory devices. So we have in the past have other products in addition to the respiratory devices, also in the cardiology side. So the ECG and ergospirometers are some of the products we've been manufacturing. But for the past 20 years, we've been focusing on the spirometers and making the asthma COPD diagnostics and monitoring. Our products are sold globally under our own brand and then through OEM partners, out of which US company Hillrom is the largest one. And to get to the scale, roughly 3 million spirometry tests are annually done with our devices, either with the Medikro brand or under our OEM partners brand. And we discuss on the quality and the regulations. So naturally, we are also ISO 13485 certified medical device manufacturer. Then let's take a look on the MDR and the intended purpose. This is a summary of what happens May this year. So the big picture is that we are moving, when we move from directive to regulation, that means that we move to EU legislation from the national legislation. So even though there's a lot of talks about the EU directives defining bananas and many other things, in practice, the directive is a guiding type of paper, and then the binding legislation after the directive is accomplished in the national legislation. So now it is so that each EU member state have the medical device directive related stuff in their national legislation. And when we move to medical device regulation, then the one set, so the EU level legislation will start to take an effect. And the national legislation is then taken out from the effect. The change is rather large because the length of the legislation text and the scope of the legislation is increasing. So the safety related life cycle management is one focus area. So the legislation is not only interested on how you design the product and how you manufacture the product, but also how you control all the risks related to the usage during the whole life cycle. And the second thing which is raising importance is the clinical evaluation, that more clinical evaluation, both in terms of what devices needs to be both type and in numbers. So more clinical evaluations are needed, and also the scope is more strictly defined. Rosa will later talk about the software. So the scope is broadening, and more and more products will move to the higher categories in the classification. So we will see a lot of software manufacturers in the medical device field being forced to register the products according to the at least class 2A. And then also there are other things like the devices that are not medical devices as such by the usage, but if they are used, for example, to clean, disinfect, or sterilize medical devices, also those devices will then go under the scope of the medical device regulation. The problematic thing, if I think about this from the point of view of the manufacturer, is that that still, even though we should have the regulation in effect in May, 2 weeks ago there were 18 notified bodies accepted to work according to the MDR and give the certification according to the MDR, and that means that 18 notified bodies is rather low amount, and those 18 notified bodies are in 11 EU member states out of the total of 27. So in less than half of the member states currently have notified bodies that are MDR capable. And for example, for Medikro, that means that our notified body don't yet have the certification to operate according to the MDR. So in Finland we have two notified bodies, and Eurofins don't at the moment have the certification. Hopefully many of the notified bodies operating currently under the MDD will get the certification, but time is running short, and it is not only the notified bodies who need to operate according to the MDR, but also the manufacturers. So that means that after May, if you need to make a major product launch, you cannot do the launch if your notified body is not MDR capable, if the manufacturer don't have the MDR capable quality system, and if the product is not documented so that it can be registered under the MDR. It's rather critical if we consider the whole EU area and of the manufacturers getting product and major releases, major updates out. For me, 1 year ago, it was clear that that the MDR was not able to get into force 2020, and the EU Commission got the information quite late that they will give a 1 year extension, so that the MDR is not going to be effect 2020, but it's 2021. I think it was rubbish that it was reasoned because of the COVID. Because the extension would have been needed in any way, because and we can see it from the number of notified bodies now, 10 months after the original deadline. So it's been a big change, and we will see how it will get to the effect in May. I wouldn't be surprised if there would be some kind of extension or some kind of let's say interim rules to get us forward, because it's quite rough if, let's say, half of the member states don't, half of the manufacturers in the member states don't be able to put the major releases out. Another thing what is coming is a medical device database, the EUDAMED, and the unique device identifiers. So there's going to be a database where the medical devices are registered, where the manufacturers, importers, and distributors are registered, and then also where clinical trials and hazards and corrective actions are listed. So this is also changing starting from May, but it will take place in phases. Then what does it say in the regulation? I have 3 slides from the, let's say, the first definitions of the Annex 1, which is defining these things and summarizing. So if you start reading, I think actually starting from the Annex 1 is quite good way to summarize things. So basically, the devices are evaluated according to their intended performance, and the intended performance is defined by the manufacturer. That means that the product not only needs to be designed but manufactured that they are fit during the normal condition to the intended performance, and that means that the product not only be safe and effective, but they shall not compromise the clinical condition or the safety of the patient or the other persons around, meaning the operators or the other or any third party who is near when the devices are used. So the safety of the patient, the operator, and also the other third parties that are present. For example, the parents of the children that are studied. And there are some studies or devices that can have a risk related to the usage, but then the risk needs to be weighted against the benefits that the device gives to the patient. So there's an overall judgment on this. What are the risks and what are the benefits? And finally, there is the saying that the product needs to be generally acknowledged state of the art. And what this means is that it doesn't mean that they are research level future best devices. It means that they need to be safe and operational, working and tested. So if we take the cars as an example, for example, the generally acknowledged state of the art, it doesn't mean the most recent electric car that has all the bells and whistles. If the car doesn't have sufficient range to operate in the intended purpose of the car. So if you need the car for 400 kilometers and the battery lasts for 100 kilometers, even though all the other things in the product would be state of the art, this is not what the medical device regulation aims. So then the electric car that can extend the range to 400 kilometers and do all the other stuff that is needed by the intended purpose, that would be then state of the art. But also a very efficient, fuel efficient diesel car would do the same trick. So state of the art, and this saying is in many areas in the legislation, but it's this kind of practical kind of formulation for this. Then about the risk management. So what needs to be done is that it's a continuous process, and the risk management needs to cover the entire life cycle of the device, not only the design and manufacturing, but also the usage, the customer support, the problem management, risk management during some new hazards that might be raising up, and so on. And that means regular systematic updating. There are 6 points here that are listed. So first of all, we need to have a risk management plan. Of course, the company needs a risk management plan for the whole company's quality system, but we also need to have it for individual device separately. We need to identify and analyze the known and then also foreseeing hazards. And we need to estimate and evaluate the risks so that what risk arising when the product is used in its intended use, but also during a reasonable foreseeing of misuse. So we need to analyze that how this device can be used in a wrong way. When analyzing this, we then need to first eliminate and control those risks, to take those risks away. So design the product so that those risks are not arising. If we cannot do that, we need to evaluate how we can then decrease the effect of those risks. So we can do training, we can do instructions, and these are basically the reasons why, if you cannot ban people of doing misuse, then you need to put different kind of warnings, and then you need to train and document the product, train the patients and train the operators so that the effects are minimized. And in the end, we need to control the risks so that the individual risks, and then the overall risk related to the product is acceptable. So first, to eliminate or reduce. If that cannot be done for all of the risks, then we need to take the protective measures, alarms, for example, so that we can decrease the effects if we cannot eliminate them, and then we provide the information. So put the warnings, give training, and so on. And there might still be some residual risks. Then we need to inform patients that after these 3 steps, what was left. And this is a summary. So this is my judgment what the intended purpose then means. In the past, we've been talking about the intended use, but now the intended purpose is a lot broader topic. So first of all, we have the intended use within the intended purpose. So intended use means that what are the claims of the device? This means that the manufacturer in this kind of Medikro makes a claim that what our product does. What are the performance-related claims? What are the benefits-related claims? And what are the disclaimers, risk, and side effects related to the usage of the product? So this is from the manufacturer what we claim. Intended medical indications, there needs to be medical reasons to use the device. So what are the diseases, conditions, state, severity, symptoms, ongoing treatments? What are the indications and contraindications? So when you should use the device and when you should not use the device. So both ways that we need to narrow this down. Third, there's the intended patient population. So are there some restrictions, for example, that only person exceeding 18 years old should be allowed to do the test, for example? Is there any other defining factors like that? Height, weight, gender, ethnicity, nationality. These can be that this information is either needed to evaluate if the test can be done, or that how the test can be done. So there can be, for example, normal range or predicted values for different height of the people or different ethnicity of the people. In spirometry, we have a lot of those. So if the patient have a higher height, then they should have a higher values because their torso is higher and their lungs are expected to be larger. So then we expect that the flow and the volume numbers that the patient is able to exhale, for example, are higher. Then we have the intended user. So this is different than the target population. So who uses the device? Do we need certain kind of education? Does the intended user needs to be healthcare professional, or can it be any citizen? If there is some special training that is needed to use the device, and so on. Might be some physical requirements, language skills to narrow down that who is able to sufficiently use the device. And then last, the fifth area is that where are we using this device? Is it a certain level of the healthcare? Is it at home? Can you use it inside or outside? And what are the conditions in the environment where you do the test? So we have a different kind of sensors and different kind of tests that for example, outside you can do the test outside, but you cannot do the test if it's raining or if it's too cold, or if it's windy. And the similar applies to the special studies made in the laboratory, that if it needs to be strictly controlled test, then most likely there are added demands on what kind of environment is acceptable. And then to summarize, we have many devices on the market. We have here 2 of our products and then a consumer electronic product, a handheld phone. But we need to remember that when you walk into the hospital, you can touch the door, the elevator buttons and the chairs, and you can have the mobile phone in your pocket. But none of these needs to be tested according to the MDR. But when we have a medical device, we have a lot of tests that they need to fulfill. There's the biocompatibility. We need to define the physical, chemical, microbiological properties. There's the electromagnetic, so both the radiation and then the immunity. There are software-related definitions. There are stability and use life related stuff, and then there's the performance and safety related criteria. So in most of these, mobile phone, which is electronic and it's more complex, it doesn't have any of these requirements. So the mobile phone it can break more easily. It doesn't need to be biocompatibility tested and so on. So, but if you take our new handheld device on the right, you can drop it to concrete 300 times from 0.5 to 1 meter, and it will still work. So it will not get broken from the drops. If you drop your mobile phone once from 1 meter to concrete, it's most likely broken. So there are many of these things, but it's simply to understand the intended purpose and then take analysis of what kind of criteria there is. And from our devices, the handheld device and the tabletop device are also different. So if the patient touch the handheld device, all the parts needs to be biocompatibility tested, but the patient don't touch the device which is on the table, only the operator, the nurse or the doctor does. So the medical device don't need to be biocompatibility tested for the nurse or doctor, only for the patient. I think that's it from my part. We can then continue if there's some questions. Thank you.
Let's take the questions afterwards. Thank you, Tuukka, for your presentation. Now let's hear from Rosa Tengvall from Kasve.
So thank you, Tuukka. Also from my side, keep the thought, intended purpose in your head. Now we deep dive to the medical device softwares. Tuukka gave already a nice introduction. What is it all about? Under MDR, most of the medical device softwares or normal softwares are forced to become a medical devices. We will hear about that shortly. So going to the next one, my name is Rosa Tengvall from Kasve Oy, currently working as a lead quality engineer. And what we do is basically this. We help the clients with their idea or innovation to go to the market. Most of our clients are medical device manufacturers, so doesn't matter hardware, software, and therefore we provide service for all the manufacturers. Expert services, but again also digital services. There are many different opportunities to make your life easier under this huge wave of MDR that is coming in May. So do you have a medical device software in your hands? On the next slide, just a short introduction. Oh, sorry, the today's agenda. So do you have a medical device in your hands? It's the first one. You need to know where you stand. What's your idea? What's the innovation? How do you know if this MDR is affecting you? Then we check out the magic words, do already some classification of medical device softwares. Just idea, what's the big deal? Medical device directive to the regulation. How does it affect you as a manufacturer? Just shortly, standard framework. You cannot escape from that when we're talking about medical devices. And at last, let's take the 11 steps on how to get to the market so that you have an idea how to go forward after this webinar. So on the next slide, about the guidance of qualification and classification of softwares under MDR. Like Tuukka mentioned many times, it's about the intended purpose, intended use. So medical device software is a software that has an intended use as a medical device. It doesn't matter if it's working independent or driving or influencing, for example, a hardware medical device, but if the intention is somewhat related to the medical device definition, then you have a medical device software in your hands. Just a few examples. Not all softwares that are used in the healthcare business, for example, are qualified as medical devices. One example is just a simple search. If you retrieve some records and you're matching records against different criteria, it's not a medical device software. It's a normal library software. But if you use basically the same function in the intention to process or somehow analyze, create or modify the medical information, then the software is governed by the medical intended purpose, thus going to this medical device software category. One good example is also you can take pictures, you can modify them. One example, taking contrast, amplifying contrast, no biggie at first, but when you think about it, MRI, you modify a contrast to identify some changes, for example, cancer changes. Again, the contrast modification is led by medical intended purpose. Thus, you have this MDR and framework in your hands. One good to know, it also doesn't matter if it's on the cloud or mobile app or on the computer. That doesn't have any effect. It's the intended medical purpose or intended medical use that are using your software. It's guiding all the classification. On the next slide, we will have the classification of medical devices. So there's a good guidance also to that. Rule 11 on the NDR that you also saw some bits in Tuukka's presentation. 2 words, basically, that you need to remember. It's the diagnosis. If your software is used in any way to support or make decisions related to diagnostics or other therapeutic purposes, it's the 2A class of medical device software. So, for example, simple search could be to a medical device if it's intended to give the doctor some help with the diagnosis, for example. Other magic word is the monitoring. If your software is monitoring any physiological processes, it's 2A category. monitoring vital physiological parameters, 2B, and then the most critical medical device software. If your software can anyway cause death or irreversible deterioration on the patient, it's class 3. Thus, the strictest requirements apply to your software. If not, if you don't have any matching magic words, diagnosis, monitoring, then you might be able to get your software still in class 1 under the MDR. Why is it important to understand the classification? Is basically that the amount of requirements that will hit you are going to grow exponentially. So from class 1, you have one part of the requirements that you need to fulfill. Class 3, you have the whole shebang. On the next one, I will give you some examples. How does it differ between MDD and MDR? Can you, Ville, swap the slide? Yeah. So under directive, the medical device softwares or the manufacturers have had it easy somehow. So for example, an app that is supporting the selection and dose calculation of cytostatic drugs was previously, or is still, under the directive class 1. But now, since the thinking process under MDR has changed, you can see the cytostatic drugs, okay, meaning cancer, okay, meaning death or serious deterioration of patient health. If your device is not functioning or the application is not functioning, therefore class 3. Meaning that the current manufacturers that are under MDD in class 1 have quite a lot to do when going towards class 3. As mentioned before, software that is suggesting any diagnosis, for example, based on test results, under directive class 1. So the directive thought that, okay, the doctor is still the responsible for the diagnosis and the decision making. Now under MDR, the manufacturers of the software take more responsibility of the accuracy of the suggestions and the test results. So might be 2B or higher, depending again if it's serious deterioration that might be caused to the patient if the app or software gives a wrong suggestion, up to class 3. The basic patient data management systems have been now in class 1 or 2A, under MDR, 2B or 3. So basically the way you think under MDR is different. So you need to reflect all the time to the intended purpose. Like Tuukka already nicely mentioned, who is using, what is it used for, where is it used? Softwares that are used in intensive care units tend to have a higher class according to the MDR. Under home care, probably lower. So the risk-based thinking is somewhat highlighted under the MDR. The manufacturer needs to understand the whole intended purpose and the life cycle of the software to be able to design it in a way that it doesn't cause harm to the patient. On the next slide, you will see the big picture framework for the manufacturers. That is also, this is the software developer view, basically. If you need to remember one word about this standard framework, it's all about traceability. So when you have this idea or innovation already in your head, innovation, it's already business, but idea in your head, and you need to start developing a software or any medical device, you need to be clever already in the beginning. So the standards are highlighting the traceability. You have different requirements for your software or medical device. You have business requirements, they are flowing to product requirements. The product requirements are some kind of new functionalities of the system. These functionalities might cause new risks. Mitigating risks are again new requirements to the product. So you have this huge amount of separate things in your head, but under this MDR standard, there needs to be the red line, the traceability. In medical device field, softwares, medical device hardwares, you need to have the traceability to know where each requirement comes from, where each functionality comes from, etc. So start building your system this in mind, the product development and your whole management environment. 3 different scopes when we talk about standards. It's the management environment, quality management system standard, the 13485 for medical device manufacturers. That's the key, and that's the baseline, what you need to have in place. As Tuukka also mentioned, the whole risk management setup needs to be in place for the whole life cycle. For softwares, you have this special process standard that gives you good guidance how you need to develop your software in order to create the necessary documentation and functionalities so that you can actually bring your medical device software on the market. Of course, it's a process standard. It tells you how you should do it, but you still have your free hands on deciding how you actually want to do it. And of course, depending on your medical device, whether it's just the software or hardware, is it a combination of both? You have a set of other standards that are related to you. Like Tuukka mentioned, biocompatibility, if you have electric equipment in the hardware, you have standard families to all that also. But keep in mind the traceability. Just ensure that everything is linking to the previous and to the last or to the next step you have in the product development, marketing, entering market, also the feedback you get, everything needs to be linked. The next slide, how to do this, is actually a quite nice presentation that our dear commission has sent us. So it's a guidance document for placing a class 1 medical device on the market. Why I chose this, it gives you the basis. Of course, when you have higher classes, you have more and more requirements that you need to fulfill, but this is basically it. And the depressing thing, or for me the best thing, because I work in the quality, is that the first step 0, is to actually integrate the MDR in your quality management system. Meaning, as Tuukka mentioned, start in the MDR, start to read the annex. What does it actually say? How should I possibly change my management system? Do we have everything in place? Do we start from scratch? What we need to actually build up? And this takes time, of course. But like I said, traceability, if you're smart in the beginning of your development, this is also going to make your life a lot easier afterwards. So quality management system, step 1 is the intended purpose and class of your medical device. So you need to confirm it. This might be also a business decision, depending on how you formulate the intended use or intended purpose of your medical device. You may be able to get around the MDR requirements if it's just a software, or if you can actually decide which functionalities do you have or want to have in your medical device. It reflects to the class. So this is the starting point, and this also defines a lot about the runway and the money you need to have in place. You see the pink arrow on the end, that's the market entry. So you have a lot of steps to do, to conduct, to document before you can actually place your device on the market. But it can be done, so no worries. Tuukka is one example. Medikro is happily on the market. There are many more to come. Under the MDR, of course, the requirements are larger, massively increasing, but in my opinion, it's still going to the right direction. It's the changing of the thinking, the intended use. That's the key. And last, I don't want to depress you, I want to encourage you. On the next slide, you just need a good attitude. Many of you have a great idea. You want to make it an innovation. You just need to be clever in the first phases. Make sure that you have the intended purpose defined, that it's crystal clear. After that, just run along. You can make it on the market. And if you need help in Kasve, we're more than willing to help you with that. That was my part of the presentation. I would also encourage, I have seen that there have been quite many questions. Let's take our 10 minutes to the questions now.
Thank you, Rosa, for your presentation. There has been a few questions here in the chat. Let's take a look at them. What we have here. Here is one question from Mirka Santala. My study colleagues are asking if I can share the Zoom link to them. We are studying well-being technology in Upper University and Applied Sciences. Thanks for answering. Yes, all of the participants will get the recording of this event afterwards. Feel free to share it.
And I think it's a good way to, this is a big topic. You need to go back and forth in it so that you understand the scope, you understand what you're actually doing.
Yes, there's also a comment from Tuukka giving some examples. Tuukka, do you want to elaborate on these examples?
Yeah, so related to my last slide was that there's a lot of individual requirements for the medical devices that needs to be tested prior the product can be put to the market, and this also means that any change related to the medical devices is affected. Let's see, I will share the screen so that are you seeing the slides? The last slide from my presentation.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah. So let's take our handheld device as an example on the right. So it has been tested for the safety standards. For example, the dropping. So you can, if you drop it, the regulation requirement is not as strict as our internal company requirements. So that device actually lasts 180 times from half a meter plus 120 times from 1 meter to the concrete, and it will still work. So there's no sharp parts, dangerous parts breaking out, and it still has the capability of doing the test. So it can have the scratches, but it will work. As said, that the internal requirement is quite rough, but there are these kind of things in the medical device standards that the first dropping is normal misuse, so it should not break, for example, from the safety point of view. Then there's the electromagnetic radiation, so it cannot radiate too much, and it needs to be able to function so that it's immune for the radiation. So both ways are tested. And then there are these biocompatibility tests that if the patient, all the stuff areas that the patient is touching needs to be rat tested. And so this is not something that is done for all the plastic buckets and stuff that you can buy from Tokmanni or from the electronic store. So there's a lot of added things, and we studied to change the product so that the metal part you can see would have been changed to plastic. So that would have taken 20% out from the mechanical costs. So we would have saved money to make it a more cheap version of it. So we made the study, so making injection molding mold would have needed a couple of weeks time from our mechanical designer, and then maybe a couple of months time from the molding house to make the part, so that we would be basically a couple of weeks work time, and 2-3 months we would have the product ready for production. So not a big deal. Maybe labor and the mold would be 10-20, let's say 20,000 euros and some months of calendar time. However, as this is a medical device, when we change the metal part to plastics, then the new plastic needs to be biocompatibility tested. So there's additional months and the test cost to make the biocompatibility testing. So that needs to be renewed. Also, all the safety testings needs to be renewed, because the metal part is actually a frame around which the product is built. So it's not only touchable, visible decoration part, but it's also the frame. So it's a structural part. And when the structure changes, all the safety testings needs to be renewed. And as it is an electronic device, and the part is part of the frame, that relates to the electronic EMC testing requirements. So also the electromagnetic testing needs to be renewed, because the magnetic radiation and the immunity can change. So as the end, this, let's say 2 to 3 month project, and let's say 15,000-20,000 euro project, becomes plus 1 year to do all the testing and renew the registrations. And the price tag is not tens of thousands, it's a 6-digit number. It's not exceeding 200,000, but it's easily 100,000 to 200,000 euro project plus the 1 year. So that means that making the change or registering the product is a lot more time consuming and price intensive than on the consumer electronics. In the consumer electronics, you launch the mobile phone, you produce that for a year, and then you launch another model. But the timelines and the costs are a bit different in the change in the medical side.
Thank you, Tuukka. There are a couple of more questions in the chat. I think we have a couple of more minutes time to answer them. There is S. Downs writes, in your opinion, has development of medical devices now become more significantly more expensive when following the MDR versus MDD?
Yes, unfortunately. The requirement set is extensively more. And under MDD, if we check the software, you could go to the market as class 1. Now more and more are class 2A, 2B. So of course the financial impact is also huge for the manufacturer. More requirements, more money is needed, and more runway and time.
Thank you, Rosa. Then there's another question from Andre Beckhuring. If a Finnish company makes software and import hardware for medical device from a non-EU country, what would be the requirements for the contract manufacturer outside the EU?
I was trying to find the correct reference to this, but I wasn't so fast, so sorry, Audrey. You have the quality agreements mentioned also in the MDR. So what to include, what can you include to these quality agreements, quality contracts you have with your suppliers? So basically, the manufacturer is responsible that the suppliers also develop their products and manufacture their products according to the MDR requirements if it's a medical device. But I can get back to that also after this show.
Thank you, Rosa. And then there's finally a question from Emmi Reijula. Could you open more in practice? What does it mean, the increasing clinical evaluation?
So unfortunately, no short answer, but I gave you the MDR guidance for clinical evaluation and then the MedDev guidance for clinical evaluation. Just cross-check them and we can come back to that also later. There are new requirements also to that and a bit longer document.
Thank you, Rosa, for your answer. And I think that's about all of the questions from the chat for now. And I think we're just in time. So at this point, I want to thank the presenters for their great presentations, and thanks everyone for participation. And we wish you all a very good rest of the day and a good upcoming weekend. Thank you for joining us today. And if there are still some questions, you can email them. You can get in touch with Kuopio Health through info@kuopiohealth.fi, and we will forward the questions to Tuukka and Rosa. So thank you and have a nice rest of the day.